The historian Theodoret, Simeon's contemporary, wrote that pilgrims to the Saints' Column came from many different countries: Ismailites, Persians, Armenians, Georgians, Himyarites from southern Arabia, as well as Spaniards, Britons, and Gauls. The existence of different faiths was not important to the saint. To him, all that mattered was God. "Keep your own faith," he used to say. "Just leave me my God." That's why at Kalatsiman, we often find the SYRIAC cross alongside Greek, Byzantine, Latin, and Maltese crosses. These symbols of different Christian traditions are a concrete indication of Saint Simeon's eclecticism. Dotting the countryside around Kalatsiman are the remains of nearly 1,000 villages and towns that prospered between the 1st and 7th centuries AD, and then fell prey to a series of economic crises, wars, invasions, and natural disasters. These are the famous dead cities of Syria's northern limestone hills. Here, even place names conjure up pictures of utter desolation. This valley is called the Valley of the Wind's Door. There is evidence of burgeoning spirituality everywhere, particularly in the remains of imposing churches. Along with financial prosperity, the inhabitants once enjoyed a rich religious life founded on their Christian faith. But now, all that is history. A walk through the ruins and rubble of what were once architectural jewels and centers of Christian spirituality is a sobering experience. Among countless examples of the extreme degradation is the baptismal font of the Church of Mushabbak, today used as a watering trough for sheep. The once magnificent Byzantine church of Kalb Lauze, that means almond heart, is another example of past splendor. Fortunately, in modern Syria, the idea of persecution or even religious discrimination is absolutely foreign. Perhaps one day, this extraordinary Christian heritage will be safeguarded in the measure that it deserves. It's a priceless treasure for Syria, as well as for the rest of the world. At Al-Ruzafa are the ruins of the Church of St. Sergis. The Bedouin tribes of Syria, many of which were Christian, were particularly devoted to St. Sergis and often visited his sanctuary in Ruzafa. Here, too, there is evidence of the ancient Syriac liturgical rite, for example in the characteristic bima, the dais in old Syriac churches from which the priest read the holy books. The Aramaean heritage of the Syrian Orthodox Christians is also rich in traditions tied to the liturgical calendar. These are celebrated with great enthusiasm and much ceremony, and include a contest held on Palm Sunday during which people try to touch the holy palms carried in procession by the bishop. And the washing of the feet ceremony on Holy Thursday that takes place here at the archaeological site of Kalat Simam.
يودو شريف شمع شالب حاتم رزود مكي خوتو.
Sadat is a small town in central Syria. In the solitude of the Church of St. George, a group of girls practices an Aramaic song, the most beautiful and simple of prayers taught by Jesus, the Lord's Prayer. There's an underlying element of melancholy in this simple religious melody, as in all the songs and melodies belonging to the SYRIAC Christian musical tradition, that expresses so well the endless suffering and hardship that this oppressed people has had to bear. The walls of this church, like the walls of the churches of St. Sergius and Bacchus in the same town, are decorated with ancient frescoes depicting scenes and people related to the Christian tradition and to the Syrian Orthodox Church in particular. The simplicity of the images is immensely moving. A description of each figure and each scene is given in elegant Syriac writing. A large number of ancient manuscripts and holy books written in Syriac is preserved here. Deplorably, the congregation treats with great familiarity priceless books that warrant a greater sense of preservation. Kamishli in Syria is a border town created by the Syrian Orthodox Christians who had fled from nearby Turkey in the face of persecutions that destroyed their villages, burned their fields, and transformed their churches into mosques. Just beyond the national border is Tur Abdin, which means Mountain of the Servants of God. 4,000 years ago, along with northern Syria and Iraq, this region was the cradle of the ancient Aramaean civilization. After the coming of Christ, it became the land of the Syrian Orthodox Christians. Nowadays, that presence has been largely lost in the annals of time. Kafro, Bazibrin. Until the beginning of the 20th century, these were prosperous Christian villages. Now, they're ghost towns surrounded by abandoned fields. Fanatical persecution by the Kurdish people, influenced by short-sighted governments to carry out an insane policy of religious cleansing, has reduced arable land around the Christian communities of Tur Abdin to wasteland. Fortunately, today the Republic of Turkey has distanced itself from the Ottoman policy of yesteryear. The last Christian family to live here in the village of Urnus, now called Baglabasi, was massacred in 1992 by Muslim Kurds who had been promised their victims money and land in return. The 5th century church of St. Kyriakos is locked up. A Muslim woman keeps the key. Near the village of Salah is the small 5th century monastery of St. Jacob, staffed by 3 monks and 2 nuns. Today, there are only 2 lay members in the Christian community that used to flourish around the tomb of the saint. We can't help but compare the decline of the Christian presence with the ruins not far from the monastery of the Persian temple of Heracles that date back long before the coming of Christ. Near the remains of the 8th century San Sobo in Ha is the Church of the Virgin Mary, whose origins go back to the early centuries of Christianity. Local traditions hold that the 3 wise men stopped here on their way to Bethlehem. Once a prosperous and bustling center of activity, it is now little more than a vantage point in what was formerly a Christian land. Ainvardo was founded, like most places in the area, before the coming of Christ. 100 years ago, it was an entirely Christian community. Today, the inhabitants are nearly all Muslim. Only 8 Christian families remain. According to local tradition, this once wealthy town with several churches was saved by St. George at the time of the massacres of 1915, which decimated the Christians living on the high plateau of Turabdin. Many of the village's inhabitants are said to have seen the saint with their own eyes as he charged the aggressors on his horse, lance in hand. It's sad to note that until only a few years ago, local oppression and murderous fanaticism against the Christian community were still the order of the day. But while the memory of those tragic circumstances is still vivid, a ray of hope appears. A few Christians have decided to remain here, stubbornly eking out a precarious living in the firm belief that centuries of violence and murder belong definitively in the past. They're convinced that this mountain of the servants of God will soon, once again, be a flourishing seat of Christianity. They contribute to this dream by sending their children every day to the monastery to learn the language of their ancestors. 3 monks, 2 nuns, and their young pupils are the congregation of the 4th century monastery of Mor Melke, another outpost along the symbolic Christian defense line in the Tur Abdin Mountains. Working the fields and tending the few domestic animals takes up much of the time of those who live in the surviving Syrian Orthodox monasteries. Like the inhabitants of any besieged fortress, they must be completely self-sufficient when it comes to the essentials, and their commitment itself becomes a form of prayer and dedication to the Lord. How many young martyrs have died here? But today, perhaps more than anywhere else, these children offer hope for tomorrow. Arkah is another semi-abandoned village in the Tur Abdin hills. State-appointed teachers don't come here. This is Kurdish country, and people are afraid. This teacher is a volunteer sent by the bishop. Perhaps he too is afraid, but he has a mission to accomplish. The children are learning their language. They know that when they grow up, their mission will be to pass it on to future generations. The parish priest insists we join him for lunch at his home. His eldest daughter prepares typical local dishes, and in our honor, the village Mukhtar joins the party. Among the pictures on the walls is a portrait of Ataturk, the founder of modern Turkey, perhaps a tribute to the man who was the first Turkish leader to advocate the separation of political power from any form of religious fundamentalism, thus indirectly helping the Christian cause. The parish priest of Keferdze also invited us to his house. Another sign of hope for the future is that 15 Christian families and 15 Kurdish families live peacefully side by side in his village. This is why he sometimes has visitors with whom he speaks in Kurdish. Among the photographs and pictures on the walls is a portrait of a young bishop, the current patriarchal vicar of the Syrian Orthodox Diocese in Germany. He was born in this village and was baptized by the same priest who offers us tea. The church, dedicated to Saint Ozozoil, dates back to the 5th century. As always, the congregation is made up almost exclusively of women, children, and elderly people. There is little to keep young people here, and inevitably, they can't wait to move away. There are still a few villages where the original ethnic identity is intact. In Bekuzioné, now Bakizian, the 120 to 130 inhabitants divided among 14 families are all Christians. 100 years ago, this was the norm in Turabdin. Today, it's a rarity. The village prepares for a celebration. In every house, women are busy cooking traditional dishes. Bread is made according to a centuries-old recipe using wheat flour ground with a mill that probably looks much the same as those used in Noah's time. The cross marked on the dough before it's placed in the oven is a sign of thanks to God for having provided the food, as well as a symbol of propitiation that He will continue to do so in the future. Easter eggs are decorated according to an age-old ritual. Fingers caress the fragile shells with traditional expertise. The eve of this celebration is no different to the eve of such celebrations anywhere else in the world. Unmarried women prepare to look their most attractive, just in case there's a future husband at the party. The older women give advice and offer alternative solutions. In this age of discotheques, drugs, and extreme forms of entertainment, in which the so-called advanced societies celebrate consumerism and the satisfaction of every human whim on the collective altar, a party like this serves as a reminder that, in the words of Jesus, "Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven."